It was a Saturday morning when I got the call. Greg's name lit up on my phone. And though I hesitated for a moment, I picked up. My brother didn't call often. Most of our communication happened in group texts or through my sister-in-law, Marissa. He was the kind of man who meant well but had an uncanny ability to make you feel like an afterthought in his busy life. "Hey, Helen," he said, his tone unusually chipper. I immediately knew he wanted something. Greg's voice always had that lilt when he was about to ask a favor. "Hi, Greg. What's up?" I replied, already bracing myself. "Well, Marissa and I were talking. And we thought, since your house has such a nice flow to it and a good backyard, it might be the perfect place for her baby shower." I froze. Of course. He wasn't calling to check on me or catch up. He was calling because they wanted to use my home. I glanced around my small but tidy living room. It was true I kept my house in great shape. The garden was trimmed, the furniture arranged just right, and everything had a place. But hosting a party, that wasn't something I was eager to do. "Oh," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "That's unexpected." Greg laughed lightly, as if to brush off my hesitation. "Come on, Helen. You know how much Marissa loves your house. It'll be just family, nothing too crazy. We'll handle the catering and everything. All you have to do is let us use the space." I didn't answer right away. It wasn't that I didn't want to help, it's just that the request felt so typical of Greg and Marissa. They always assumed I'd say yes, that I'd go along with whatever they needed without thinking twice. And, truth be told, I usually did. "I guess that could work," I finally said, though a knot tightened in my stomach. "When were you thinking?" "Next month," Greg said quickly, as if sealing the deal. "Marissa will call you later with the details." "Thanks, Helen. You're the best." And just like that, he hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand. "You're the best," I muttered to myself. Somehow, it didn't feel like a compliment. Over the next few weeks, my house transformed into something unrecognizable, like a set piece for a glossy magazine spread. Marissa, with her impeccable taste and an unshakable air of authority, descended on my space as if it were her personal project. She arrived with armfuls of pastel decorations, rented tables, folding chairs, and an endless stream of ideas that seemed to outgrow the modest charm of my home. Nothing was off limits, not even my furniture. "Can we move this table to the garage? It's just not the vibe," she declared one afternoon, her tone breezy but decisive. Before I could muster a response, Greg was already hauling the table away, leaving behind an empty space that felt strangely symbolic. It wasn't just a table, it was my table, my home, but there it went, without so much as a proper discussion. I found myself caught in the whirlwind of preparations, scrubbing the floors until they gleamed, polishing the windows until they sparkled, and planting fresh flowers in the garden to add a pop of color. I told myself it was for the guests, but deep down, I knew better. I wanted everything to be perfect, not just for the party, but for Marissa. If she couldn't find fault, maybe, just maybe, she'd finally see me as someone worth inviting into her inner circle. As I stepped back to survey the pristine, picture-perfect version of my house, a tiny flicker of pride lit up inside me, but it was quickly drowned out by a heavier feeling. The sinking realization that no matter how hard I tried, I might never truly belong. The morning of the shower, I woke up early to finish the last-minute touches. By the time Marissa arrived, everything was in place. The tables were set, the balloons were tied, and the scent of freshly baked muffins lingered in the air. I stood back, admiring the scene, and for a brief moment, I felt proud of what I'd accomplished. Marissa walked in, carrying a box of decorations. She looked around and nodded approvingly. "This looks great, Helen," she said. It was the closest thing to a compliment I'd ever gotten from her. "Thanks," I said, feeling a flicker of warmth. "I'm glad you like it." She began unpacking her box, barely glancing at me. "So," she said casually, "I just wanted to go over the plan for today. We're expecting about 30 people. It's mostly family, close friends, people who are really part of our inner circle." I frowned, sensing where this was headed. "Right," I said slowly. "And I was thinking," she continued, still not meeting my eyes, "since it's such a close-knit group, it might be better if you step out for the afternoon, just so it feels more intimate." Her words hit me like a slap. "Step out," I repeated, my voice shaking slightly. Marissa glanced up, her expression breezy, as if she hadn't just told me to leave my own house. "Yeah, just for a few hours. You can come back once it's over." "Of course." I stared at her, stunned. But it's my house, I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. She tilted her head, as if I were the one being unreasonable. I know, and we're so grateful you're letting us use it. But it's really just for close family. I'm sure you understand. I didn't understand at all. But I didn't argue. I didn't trust myself to speak. Not when my chest felt so tight. And my throat burned with unshed tears. Instead, I nodded stiffly and walked out of the room. I grabbed my keys and left without another word. As I backed out of the driveway, I glanced at my house, my home, and felt a wave of anger and hurt crash over me. This was more than just a baby shower. This was a reminder, yet again, that I wasn't truly part of the inner circle. I didn't have a plan when I drove away. I just kept going, turning down roads I barely recognized, letting the movement of the car soothe me. I felt foolish for agreeing to host the shower in the first place. Foolish for thinking this time would be different. That this time I'd feel like I belonged. The suburbs melted away, replaced by open fields and winding country roads. I thought about all the times I'd been the one to compromise. To bend over backward for others. Only to be left feeling invisible. The memories stacked up like bricks in a wall. Each one reinforcing the truth I tried so hard to ignore. I was never going to be enough for them. As I drove further away from home, the streets narrowed and the scenery changed to rolling hills and patches of dense forest. The soft hum of the car engine was the only sound, and the solitude felt strangely comforting. I hadn't planned to leave town, but with every passing mile, the thought of going back to my empty house felt unbearable. I found myself on a highway I didn't recognize, the kind with faded signs pointing to small towns you never hear about unless you're passing through. One sign caught my eye, Maple Ridge 12 miles. I'd never been there before, but the name sounded pleasant. Something about it felt inviting, as if the town might offer the escape I didn't know I needed. When I arrived, Maple Ridge was exactly what I'd hoped it would be: quiet, quaint, and untouched by the rush of modern life. The streets were lined with old brick buildings, small shops with hand-painted signs, and lampposts decorated with seasonal wreaths. It felt like stepping into a postcard. I parked the car near a small diner and went inside. The smell of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon greeted me, and for the first time all day, I felt a pang of hunger. I slid into a booth by the window and ordered the kind of breakfast I hadn't allowed myself in years: pancakes, scrambled eggs, and bacon, with a side of orange juice. As I ate, I let my thoughts wander. The ache in my chest had dulled slightly, replaced by a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in years, I didn't have to be anyone's support system or backup plan. I didn't have to worry about meeting anyone's expectations. I could just be. After breakfast, I wandered through the town. The main street was lined with shops selling everything from handmade pottery to antique books. In one store, I picked up a small vase with a delicate floral design. It wasn't anything fancy, but it felt like a gift I could give myself, a token of this day. This moment of choosing myself over everyone else. At one point, I stopped to watch an older woman planting flowers in front of her shop. She caught my eye and smiled. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" she said, her voice warm and welcoming. "It is," I replied, surprised by how much those two words meant to me. It had been a long time since a stranger had spoken to me with such kindness. As I walked away, I realized how much I'd been missing this kind of connection, the small human moments that made you feel seen and valued. In Maple Ridge, I wasn't Greg's sister or Marissa's sister-in-law. I was just Helen, a woman passing through, and that felt like enough. By late afternoon, I found myself sitting on a bench in the town square, watching children chase each other around a fountain. My thoughts drifted back to the baby shower. I imagined the laughter and chatter filling my house, the guests admiring the decorations I'd put up and the food I'd helped prepare. All while I was somewhere miles away, deliberately excluded. I thought about Greg, my younger brother who used to follow me around like a shadow when we were kids. Back then, he'd looked up to me, trusted me. Somewhere along the way, that dynamic had shifted. Now, I felt more like an afterthought in his life. Someone he called only when he needed something. And Marissa, I wasn't sure what to make of her anymore. Was she intentionally cruel, or just oblivious to how her words and actions affected me? Either way, I realized, it didn't matter. I couldn't keep bending over backward to earn her approval or anyone's. For that matter, as the sun began to set, I decided it was time to head home. The thought of returning to my house, now empty and quiet after the party, filled me with a mix of dread and resolve. I couldn't undo what had happened, but I could decide how to move forward. The drive back felt shorter, as if my time in Maple Ridge had lightened some invisible weight I'd been carrying. When I pulled into my driveway, the remnants of the baby shower were still scattered across the yard, folding chairs, half-deflated balloons, and a stack of plastic cups on the porch. I sighed and went inside, bracing myself for the quiet. The next morning, Greg called. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but something in me had shifted. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I answered. "Hey, Helen," he said. "Just wanted to say thanks again for letting us use your place yesterday. The shower was great." I took a deep breath. "Greg, we need to talk." There was a pause. "Okay. What's up?" "I felt humiliated yesterday," I said, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. "Marissa told me to leave my own house because it was only for close family. Do you have any idea how hurtful that was?" Greg stammered, clearly caught off guard. "Wait, what? She said that?" "I didn't know." "She did," I said firmly, "and this isn't just about yesterday. I've been feeling like an outsider in my own family for a long time. I've bent over backward to help you and Marissa, to be supportive, but I never feel like it's enough. I'm tired, Greg. I'm tired of feeling invisible." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Finally, Greg spoke. "I'm sorry, Helen. I didn't realize. I guess I've taken you for granted. That's not fair, and I'm sorry." His apology was sincere, but it didn't erase the years of hurt. Still, it was a start. Over the next few weeks, I made small but significant changes. I stopped saying yes to every request. I joined a local book club and started volunteering at a community garden, finding fulfillment in places that had nothing to do with my family. Slowly, I began to rebuild my sense of self. Piece by piece, Greg reached out more often, and while our relationship still had its challenges, I felt a shift. He listened more, and even Marissa seemed to tread more carefully around me. I didn't expect a complete transformation, but I appreciated the effort. One afternoon, as I watered the flowers in my garden, I thought back to Maple Ridge, the kindness of strangers, the peacefulness of that small town. It had reminded me of something I'd forgotten. I didn't have to earn my worth. I was enough, just as I was, and for the first time in years, I felt at peace.